our inner child is actually running the show, not only in our conflict and in our relationships and in our friendships, but also in our sexuality, because it's more at the forefront of every area of our life. And we don't realize that we're not reaching our potential in our sexuality because we're not allowing our inner queen to come forth in that area. And to know that not only are we deserving to receive, but are we able to actually allow ourselves to be fully seen? Are we allowing ourselves to be fully felt? Are we allowing ourselves to be really intimate with our beloved in a way that when you look at all the other areas of our lives, it's actually showing up everywhere else too.
Hi, love. This is Orion's World, previously known as Killer Life Podcast. I'm Orion, transformational coach, hypnotherapy speaker, and a woman who turned deep pain into wild possibility. I overcame trauma, poverty, abuse, depression, infertility. Doctors gave me 5% chance of conceiving. But I rewrote my story. I created a new one, and the life they said was impossible. Now I travel the world. I'm married to the love of my life, and I am a mom to an amazing little boy. I'm also the founder of Orion's Method, where you connect within, reclaim your power, and manifest your dreams. Welcome to my world, Orion's World. We go deep, we get real, and we rise. This isn't just a podcast, it's an activation. Let's go. Hi, and welcome to the show. This is your host, Orion. Thank you so much for being here. Today, I have with me Jade Bryce. She's a relationship coach specializing in holistic intimacy, sensuality, and personal empowerment. With a deep understanding of human connection and a passion for guiding others toward fulfilling relationships, Jade helps individuals and couples cultivate deeper trust, communication, and authenticity. She empowers clients to embrace their desire, break free from limiting patterns, and create meaningful intimacy in their lives. As the host of the popular podcast, Jade engages in a raw, heartfelt conversation with thought leaders and experts exploring love, relationships, and self-discovery. In this episode, we talked about worthiness in the bedroom, learning to listen to your body, sexual tools to increase pleasure, and how to be sexually empowered and deeply connected with your partner. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Jade, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, yeah, I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Everything that you do just seems so exciting and juicy. And before we dive in, maybe you can share a little bit about that passion of yours and how you got into that and how did it evolve over the years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've always had a strong desire to somehow help people that have had trauma. I never exactly knew how I would go about that. But even as a teenager, I was heavily involved in church, and it was a bit dogmatic. So that actually traumatized me a bit itself. But I was very involved in church, trying to be useful, feel that there was something bigger that I could be a part of. And then in my 20s, that went into working with children in Uganda, and providing meals to homeless and things like that. So there was always something that I was looking for, and all beneficial, all important. But it wasn't until I started to heal my own trauma that I realized that a lot of the pain in the world is because there's so many people. You hear the saying all the time, hurt people, hurt people. And so I started to realize, once I started to heal my own trauma, mainly because I became a mother. And when I became a mother, it was I really didn't want my children to go through what I went through. And so I went in this whole discovery of how to be in healthier relationships, how to, even down to the simple things of motherhood, like how to be more patient. But the main thing was I didn't want to pass on my trauma. And it was when I started to actually heal my own trauma that I really wanted to be a part of helping others heal theirs. And so, I started to study imago therapy. I started to study the chakra system. I was studying everything. inner child work, and internal family systems. And I think my biggest wound that rippled into a lot of other areas was my sexual trauma. It was my sexual trauma. And then, as many of us have, my abandonment trauma from my parents. And in sexual trauma, there's a lot of betrayal wrapped up in that. And for some of us, depending on what it looked like after our sexual trauma, there may be abandonment wounds wrapped up in there, right? As well, because maybe our parents weren't there for us, or maybe we didn't feel wrapped up by our community. And so much can be wrapped up in our sexual trauma. But it was when I started to heal mine that a lot of other layers started to unfold as well, like the betrayal, but also the unworthiness wound, also the feeling of being able to receive. Like there was so much wrapped up in that one wound of the sexual trauma. And so when I really started to dive into that, I started to realize how much was there, but not only that, how much power was in the healing of it, like how much potency was in our sexual energy, and how much, especially as a woman and as a man, I haven't studied men's sexuality as much, but men being able to really be integral in their sexual energy and all of that, that's a whole nother very powerful area. But what I really studied was women's sexuality. And man, when a woman can really feel like that she can resource from within herself, and it's not she's not having to resource it from outside, which is like also, when you think about that, it also heals some of that anxious attachment wound, right? Because we're learning to go within. So there's so much wrapped up in that one area of my life of my sexual trauma that when I started to heal that, I thought, this is it. Like, this is where so much lies. And, even when it comes to the inner child trauma, or maybe speaking up for ourselves, right? If we learn to do that in our sexuality, if we learn to be able to, in the bedroom, speak our needs or speak our preferences, it's so much easier to do that out in life. And a lot of us, as inappropriate as it sounds, our inner child is actually running the show, not only in our conflict and in our relationships and in our friendships, but also in our sexuality, because it's more at the forefront of every area of our life. And we don't realize that we're not reaching our potential in our sexuality because we're not allowing our like inner queen to come forth in that area. And to know that not only are we deserving to receive, but are we able to actually allow ourselves to be fully seen? Are we allowing ourselves to be fully felt? Are we allowing ourselves to be like really intimate with our beloved in a way that when you look at all the other areas of our lives, it's actually showing up everywhere else too. Like our inner child is running that show, keeping us from being able to be fully seen. And there's a saying that someone had said on my podcast a couple years ago that always stuck with me. And it's, the way you have sex is the way you live life, and vice versa. I think it's so true. Like if you are having a watered down version of intimacy in the bedroom, you're probably living that way too. If you're afraid to experience that like really loud, uninhibited pleasure, you're probably living that way too. And they say this about dance too. If you look at the way someone dances, if they're rigid and they're like, they don't allow their body to really move, they may be feeling that way in life. I really think it connects to how we show up in the bedroom as well. If we are afraid to let ourselves be fully seen, like letting our partners see us in our, whether it's our wild animal or our, our goddess self, or that uninhibited pleasure priestess, whatever it is, or even just, feeling confident in our ability to please our partner, whatever it is. If you look at the rest of your life, it probably shows up in other areas as well. So I do feel that when we heal our sexuality, a lot of those other wounds that show up, the inner child, the attachment, the ability to speak up for ourselves, boundaries, all of it, it does start to ripple out. It's not like the cure all, but it starts to ripple out and it does transform so many different areas. So that's why I got like, once I started to get into the sexuality, the healing of my sexuality, even though I'd done so many other things, it felt like, oh, like this is where I'm going to spend a lot of time, not only for myself, but also in what I teach and in what I discuss and in the programs that I create.
How do you feel healing your sexuality healed your relationship or enhanced your relationship?
You know, the majority of my 20s, I was very out of body in intimacy with partners. I almost felt like just when I look back at those relationships or the people I dated, and you know, in my 20s, I was a ring girl for a fight league, and I was in the Playboy Mansion, and so this wasn't just in intimacy with my partners. I felt that my body was kind of a workplace, and I was kind of on autopilot with my sensuality all around. And you would maybe think, when you look at a Playboy model or you look at someone, you know, a ring girl, you maybe think like, oh, they're so confident, or man, they're so sensual. But I actually was not. I was on such autopilot, so much so that when I was intimate with people, I was very out of body. I couldn't experience pleasure from another. Even when I did have pleasure, the pleasure felt out of body too. It wasn't like I was fully experiencing it.
Like somebody else is having the pleasure or somebody else is having the sex.
It just, have you ever been in a conversation with someone or been in a room with people and not felt fully there?
Oh, yeah, many times.
Yeah, you just don't feel fully present. I was feeling that way even in intimacy, which is the place that really you want to be the most present. And so it's such an important area of our lives. And so it was almost like you know, it was also affecting the partners I was calling in, because it was calling in partners that treated me that way, that treated me almost like a human masturbation tool. It wasn't like they cared about my heart or what I was experiencing. It was all about them. And it wasn't until I was 34 or 35 that I entered into a relationship with a man that actually did care about my pleasure, that actually like cared about what our intimacy was like, that wanted to talk about it, and that wanted us to have a closeness in that area. It was the first time I'd ever experienced that. So it wasn't until I entered into that relationship around 34, 35 years old that I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot look a man in the eyes, not only in the bedroom at all. I cannot look a man in the eyes. And I feel like I can't be in my body. And so that was an invitation for me to really go into it. And it changed. You know, that relationship lasted 3 years. He didn't end up being my person, but because he provided such a safe space, and he was the first person that actually cared, it was like, that was the relationship where I really bloomed. And then the two relationships to follow, I had one more after him, and then now my husband. It's a completely different relationship in the sense that because I'm able to allow myself to receive, I'm able to allow myself, because it's one of my big wounds was not allowing myself to receive, because it was like if someone was the one to give it to me, then they could also take it away. So I was very much the woman in relationship that was guarded, and like I had to be the one. You know, it was almost like a control thing. Like I had to be the one to have my name on the lease, or I had to be the one that, you know, I didn't want anything to be taken away. And so when I allowed myself to receive in the bedroom, it really started to break open to where I could receive in all areas, like provision, protection, more love. And so it opened my heart more outside the bedroom, but also that, because I think it's so much wrapped up in our worthiness as well sometimes, when we don't feel the ability to receive, or we don't feel the ability to be seen in the bedroom, it's because we don't feel good enough to. Because if we allow that to happen, then all of those vulnerabilities are more to the surface as well. And so when that healed, and I in that one relationship, and then it carried into the next two, I was able to, and it's still, we're never fully healed. My inner child still tries to show up in conflict and, cause me to shut down. And then luckily my partner is really, really great at calling me on it and telling me like, oh, you're shutting down right now. And he doesn't really allow me to go there. He helps me out of it. But that worthiness, like if that wasn't there in the bedroom, then even in the inner child wound and conflict, if when my partner were to point that out, like, oh, you're shutting down, and I realized like, oh, I can't look him in the eye right now, my inner child's taking over, then I would go into a shame spiral because I would feel so unworthy about like the process that I'm even in, and I wouldn't be able to show up fully. So it changed my relationship, not only in how I show up in conflict, not only in how I receive financially, or, how much love I allow in from my partner, but it also changed the amount of pleasure I'm able to receive. When a woman's able to receive pleasure, I truly think it changes her life as well. I don't know if you've read Pussy by Mama Gina.
No, I haven't. But I know Mama Gina, yeah.
So she talks about pleasure and how it changes a woman's nervous system. It changes a woman's brain, even. It changes the way that she operates in the world. And it's amazing when you're able to receive that from yourself. And that's, for a lot of us, the first step. When you're also able to receive it from a partner, I feel that it truly changes how we operate in the world. Like you think about a woman who has a love life or a relationship with herself even that is void of pleasure. And you think about how she may operate in the world, how she may walk through the grocery store, how she may talk to a stranger. And then you think about a woman who, and as a mother, this isn't really realistic to say daily, but you think about a woman who, this last week she had 6 orgasms with her partner, or she had a practice with herself, whether it was like a cow practice or a hot bath, whatever it was, where she allowed herself to really flood her nervous system in pleasure. And you think about how she walks through the grocery store, how she talks to a stranger, how she feels just in life. And it really is like a night and day difference. So
Yeah, but what was it in the journey? Was it finding the right partner that can help you heal, or did you went and studied and that helped you heal first? What came first? Or was it together? And if it was together, how did your partner or partners react to that?
yeah, I think it's different for everyone. But for me, I didn't notice that I had this wound until a partner showed up that cared about it. So that's what highlighted it out to me. However, when he highlighted that out to me and I dove into it, I then outgrew that partner, because that partner, although he wanted great sex with me, there was a spiritual disconnect. He wasn't actually looking for a spiritual connection, more of like that, like deep physical connection. And so I feel that like when it comes down to what comes first, the partnership or the deep dive on our own, we can't really outsource it to, well, it's, my partner doesn't desire this with me, or my partner doesn't show up in this way, because then we're giving our power away. A lot of times, like there's that, you hear as within, so without. A lot of times when we change something in ourselves, we'll see that change in our partnership, because our partner's a mirror, right? And so no matter who our partner is, whether it was one like that one that I had, or the one I had after that was very spiritually evolved, and wanted to connect on all levels, not just physically and intimately, but also spiritually. No matter which partnership I was in, or with my partner now, who is like, meets me in all ways, it's up to me to like unlock that within myself, because you could look at all three of those partners, and no matter who I'm with, if I'm not doing that work within myself, it's going to show up in my relationship. So, you can do that work and then your partner show up and meet you. Or you're able to at least transform it to where your partner then follows. And a lot of times we want men to be the leader, but a lot of times in intimacy and in sexuality, it is the woman who leads the energy. Like the woman sets the tone in that area. But a lot of us really are waiting on our partner to make a difference, or waiting on our partner to show up a certain way, waiting on our partner to do something in the bedroom that then unlocks us.
So what's a quick example of the shift that we can have in order to elevate our partners in our sexual life, or something we can do to elevate that? Like, what's the healing process? Do you go to a tantra school? Do you work with somebody? Do you read something? Like, what's the process of elevating this knowledge and implementing it in the bedroom?
Yeah, those are all good steps, and they could all be helpful. I think what's most important is experiencing it with yourself first, because if you don't experience it with yourself, you cannot experience it with your partner. Your partner can elevate it, amplify it, magnify it, but if you don't first experience it in your own practice, you're not going to know how to experience it with your partner. It's like the inner child wounding. Like, yes, your partner helps you so much heal your inner child by providing safety. But if you said it, before we hit record about feeling safe in Israel, like it's something you feel within first. If you don't know how to provide safety for your inner child, nothing your partner does is going to allow you to feel that safety. So much of our wounding happens in relationships. So much of our healing happens in relationship. But if we don't know what it feels like to be safe in our nervous system, we will not receive it from another. It feels too scary. It feels too foreign. So in that, when it comes to pleasure, in our sex life, we have to let our nervous system know that it's safe to feel it. We have to let our nervous system know that it's even possible. And so that happens in our own self-practice. And it doesn't have to be, I think a lot of women, especially mothers or entrepreneurs, feel that they don't have the time for that it's too time consuming. But whatever your practice is, just allowing your body to feel pleasure during that and allowing yourself to experience like self-touch, whether you're using a jade egg or a cervical wand, or you're just using your own physical touch, allowing yourself to receive in that way and telling your nervous system, this is safe. I deserve this. And even just making the time for it is telling your nervous system that you deserve it. Because a lot of times when you don't take the time for it, we're telling our bodies, I don't deserve the pleasure because we're not even making time for it. So when we make the time for it, we're teaching our bodies, I deserve this. I am worthy of this. And this is safe to feel. And the deeper we go into that with ourselves, the more we can feel it with a partner. And the more we feel it with a partner, the more it invites them into feeling it with us.
What are some self-pleasure practices you teach your clients?
So the first thing that's really important with self-pleasure is that we feel a yes from our body, and that we experience consent, because a lot of our pain, not just in our sexuality, but in all areas, comes from things not being consensual. Whether it's like we forced ourselves into some trauma healing experience, but our body actually wasn't ready for it. And then we just re-traumatized ourselves. So when entering into a self-pleasure practice, and it becomes quicker and quicker each time, but just making sure that your body is actually feeling a yes, like that your body feels safe to do it. And you're not just like rushing yourself into like, I have to do this because this is the only way I'm going to heal. That's actually just re-traumatizing. So
how do you get the yes from the body? Like, how do you tune in?
Yeah. So learning to hear from your body, sometimes when I go into my practice, I can just feel and everybody's body speaks differently to them, but you can feel like an opening and an expansion of like, oh, like you want to flow there. Whereas like when it's a no, you feel like a contraction, you feel a tightness. And it doesn't mean to, if you keep feeling that may actually be trauma, where you still need to like stay within your window of tolerance, but still push your edge, like I'm going to do a little bit each time to where I can warm myself up, or I can soften this part of me. But a lot of times what you can do, if you keep feeling a no, which is like that contraction and that tightness, is do something that also feels like pleasure, whether that's dance, eating some chocolate, like slowly, whether that's a breast massage, whether that's an oil bath, and you slowly start to open your body up to feeling good. Because a lot of us are so shut down when it comes to allowing that. When we start to open that up and we start to receive a yes from our body, then, there's a couple of different practices. One of my favorites is cervical de-armoring. Another, and we can go into what that is if you'd like. Cervical de-armoring is one of them. Another one is just breathing through, and you can put on, there's two people that I really love. It's Joe Dispenza and Emily Fletcher for breath work and meditation. So you can put on one of their meditations, but you'll do that simple breath work that, like, the good thing about breath work, and both of theirs are great, is that it causes you to let go of control. So a lot of times when we're getting a no, we're feeling really rigid or contracted, it's because some of our trauma is keeping us in like a control state. So if we can, enter into that practice using breath work or meditation, then we get out of that like prefrontal cortex that's like, the judgment brain, which is the part of our brain that would maybe also tell us like that we're not deserving, or we need to be doing something more productive, or this isn't showing up for our family, whatever it is. When we use that breath work to get out of the control mindset, then we get more into our bodies. So that's really important. And then inviting in touch, whether that's touch of our breast or our clitoris, whatever it is that brings pleasure. And for a lot of women, when you first do this, you'll feel numb. You actually won't feel pleasure. But it's because we're shut down in those areas, or we're out of our bodies. So it's like also taking a lot of patience of like being with whatever happens. If you don't feel anything and you're numb, you still allow yourself the 15 minutes, whatever amount of time you set, 15 to 30 minutes, and then you show up to your practice again. It's just like wanting to write a book, or it's just like going to the gym. You may not see results or feel super creative the first time, but you continue to show up. And as you continue to show up, that's when those layers start to melt away. So it could just involve breath work and meditation and some touching of your body. It could be an actual practice like cervical de-armoring. There's also things like jade egg. But it's really allowing yourself, teaching your nervous system that it's safe to feel pleasure.
I read somewhere that people say that eggs are like they can get bacteria and it's not safe and all that.
It's really, yeah. So I would say if you're new to to using tools, start with a wand, a crystal wand or a glass wand, because a jade egg does involve a lot of it involves a lot of hygiene because there's a hole in it. And so you want to make sure the hole is like perfectly clean. If you use a high quality crystal wand or glass wand, you don't really have to worry about that. All you have to do is wash it with soap and water. There's no holes. There's nothing like extra that you need to do.
So what do you need to do with jade eggs?
So jade eggs have a hole that you put a string through. So it's really not that difficult. You want to make sure you're changing your string every time. And you want to make sure that string is something that you are okay with having in your body. Silk or unflavored organic dental floss. You never want to use something that's synthetic. Then also with the hole, you want to make sure that as soon as you're done using it, you wash it with hot water. I use Dr. Bronner's soap. So something that is like, you're okay having that in your body. You don't want to use like Dove soap, to wash it, things like that. So it's really not a difficult thing to care for. I personally don't know anyone who has had any issues keeping their product sanitary or having.
That's a relief, yeah. Because I was like, what? No more Jade? That's not good.
No, yeah. You don't want to keep it in for more than 4 hours. I have heard of women who like keep it in all day, and there's been issues there. So you want to really it's also a powerful tool. So you want to keep it sacred in that you only use it for your practice.
Mm. And I want to go into what was it? Pelvic de-armoring?
Cervical de-armoring. Yeah. So just to close off on the previous thing really quick, one thing that I will say is key in those practices is allowing yourself to sound, because a lot of us are sound amplifies pleasure. It also moves energy.
It's also coming down when you're humming or singing. It comes down the vagus nerve, and it sends the brain a signal that you are now relaxed and you're safe. And when you're relaxed and safe and open, then you can enjoy pleasure.
Yeah. And a lot of us are judging our sound, or we're afraid that we sound weird, or we don't want to be too loud. Again, that probably shows up in other areas of our lives. So when we're bringing sound in and we're allowing whatever sounds to want to come out, that actually, it not only moves the energy, it amplifies the pleasure, and you want to do all of that in your personal practice. And then when you bring it into your partner practice, you'll realize that you feel so much more. You're so much more in your body. You feel so much pleasure. But a lot of us shut down sound. That's like one of the main things we do in our practice. And we want to allow sound. We want to connect to our breath, and we really want to make sure our body is also allowed to move the way it wants to move.
So cervical de-armoring is just a process of humming or singing, or what does it look like?
No. I just wanted to close that off from the previous topic, but it goes into cervical de-armoring in that with cervical de-armoring, firstly, you'll need a cervical wand. It's like a S, almost like a snake S-shaped wand, and it's like that so that and it looks really long. So a lot of women are intimidated by it, but you're only using about half of the wand. So when you're entering it, the reason why it's a curve is because the point of it will touch your cervix on the side of it. And so what you're doing when you're placing the cervical wand in, and again, you always want to practice consent and feel a yes from your body. And the more you ask your body yes or no questions, the more you'll feel what a yes or no feels like. So you'll put, when you feel that yes and you enter the cervical wand, you always want to enter it in slowly. I like to hold it in my hand and just kind of warm it up, the part that's going to enter my body, and put my intentions into it, speak my intentions, speak my prayers. And then you'll want to slowly enter it into your body as it reaches your cervix, which you'll feel you cannot go any further. That's your cervix. That tip is going to be touching a certain part. You'll want to, you can intuitively feel into where it should be placed. But if you're going to do if you're going to actually follow a process, you could do like 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, so that you're going all the way around the cervix. And when you're touching those points on your cervix, the reason why sound is so important is because our cervix has it. A lot of us, the reason why it's important to de-armor it is because it has become armored through some of us sexual trauma and betrayal. Some of us,
I think it's one in 3 women that had sexual trauma or something crazy like that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, 1 in 3. Yeah. But that's when we're speaking about violation and assault, right? But so many of us women have also had sex when we didn't want to.
Yeah, no boundaries.
Yeah, it's like a self violation, right? And so our cervix began to armor itself through each of those experiences. Some of us would just cram a tampon up there even without even really feeling into our bodies. So there's so many different ways that we've also violated ourselves.
I've never heard that concept of asking consent from our own body or self-violation. This is really fascinating. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, and I mean, when we learn that self consent, that I think in anything, in any trauma healing practice that we go into, whether it's we're going to do a group trauma experience, or we're going to a ceremony, or whatever it is, always listening to your body. It keeps us from being in that trauma loop of just re-traumatizing ourselves. But the also I brought up the tampons and not even listening to her body, just like cramming it in. A lot of us have gone to some really harsh OBGYN visits.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I remember that. Oh gosh. Yes. Terrible.
Yeah, so there's so many things outside of just harassment or assault where our cervix is armored due to things being crammed into our bodies, or not feeling consent, or not feeling safe. Even being performative if we're in a safe partnership, but like maybe we didn't really want to have sex, but we felt like we had to perform a certain way. There's so many ways that we have armored our cervix. Also, it can be generational. It can be something that we carried down from our ancestral line, pain in our cervix, or armored cervix. And so when we go in with the wand and we place it on those points, 12, 3, 6, 9. And again, you can place it on any point that you intuitively feel like placing it on, just really feeling into it. But what you want to do is you breathe in to feel what's there. So say the cervical wand is on 12 o'clock. You breathe in and you just feel the emotion of what's there. And for a lot of us, the first emotion is grief. And so it can feel a little scary to go into that. But the thing is if you don't go into it and you don't feel it, it's not going to heal. It's going to stay there. And so you breathe in to feel. And then when you exhale, you sound. And that sound is what's going to move the grief. It's what's going to process the grief, because that's what sound does. It moves energy. And so you'll do that at 12 o'clock for as long as you feel you need to be there. And once you feel ready to move on to the next place, you'll go to 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and you'll repeat the process, breathing in to feel, exhaling to sound. And you'll be surprised how much more you can feel in your pleasure practice or in your intimacy with your partner when you have de-armored your cervix. Your body actually opens up in ways that, like, you will feel a difference in your body. Like, it will feel more open when you take your partner into your body. And so it's one of the most powerful practices that I believe we can do, not only for ourselves, but for our intimacy with our partner. And what I feel, the earlier you do it in your trauma, your sexual trauma healing, or in your pleasure practices, the more you'll be able to open up in those practices as well. And then, I'd say the cervical practice, like, it's not a one-time thing. If you're doing it every other week or once a month, and in between that, you're incorporating some pleasure practices, it's going to change the way that you experience sex with your partner. But like we were discussing before, this is something that you really have to unlock within yourself, and then you bring it into your partnership, because it's not, while you and your partner are in each other's care, and it is partly our job to help our partners heal, ultimately, we cannot do that work with our partner unless we're doing it with ourselves. So yeah, cervical de-armoring, I think, is one of the first, if not the first thing that is so beneficial to do in this process of self-pleasure and trauma healing when it comes to our sex life.
When you did it for yourself, or when you saw other women do it, your clients, what shifts did you see in them or with their relationship?
It's interesting. I've actually, and I don't, I would have to look at photos of myself to see, but a lot of women say that they even feel that their face changes, that like their face shifts, almost like it becomes more toned, like there's a connection there between the cervix and the face. So I have heard that a lot. I actually haven't looked for myself, but they say it's like almost like they feel younger in their appearance. The cervix in Taoism, they teach that the cervix is very connected to the heart. So if you have an armored cervix, you likely have an armored heart. And so when you de-armor the cervix, your heart is able to open more as well. And so you feel softer, you feel more open, you feel more able to connect on a heart level, because they are so connected. And I know for one client that's worked with me for a long time, um, she said that like the cervical de-armoring just in itself, that was, she felt like, it unlocked a completely different woman in her expression, like in her ability to feel kind of like a wild woman, to be able to like go take a dance class and feel like she really is like unleashed in it, you know. I know um, for me, it felt mostly ancestral, actually. It felt like it felt like I was carrying a lot of wounds in my cervix from, I come from a long line of Native American ancestry. And when you think about the trauma that culture has gone through, especially a lot of the rapes that the women have gone through in the Native American culture, I know for me, one of the first times I did cervical de-armoring and I did that sound to release, it sounded like a bunch of different women sounding through me. And so for me, it felt like I was not only healing my own cervix, I was also healing my lineage. Um, and what feels beautiful being the mother to two daughters is that I feel that I'm doing that work for them as well. And so for me, it's more of like an inner knowing. Like, well, yes, I feel that I've expressed differently in the world. For me, it feels more like an inner knowing of like things have shifted, not only for me, but for my family.
That's beautiful. You're so brave to go and take that route and be so fully expressed and vulnerable with who you are and your sexuality and helping other people heal theirs and giving them permission to feel the pleasure, the release, the healing that you did. This is so beautiful.
Thank you. I do feel brave. So thank you.
You gotta be brave to do what you do. Even though we're like, we came a long way, but even me, with I talked a little bit about my new website, and there, some, I'm not actually my my designer was laughing at me because he's like, we need to have a headshot, but all your shirts are very, very open. We need to have a professional headshot. Um, because I'm also I have another project that is more kind of conservative, and I need to look a little more proper. And they were laughing at me, and I was like, "That's not funny. Stop it."
Yeah. Well, for a lot of us, we may not realize that we carry it, but it was not that long ago that women were heavily persecuted for any sexual expression. It was not that long ago. It was literally just like our great grandmother's generation. And so, if that was just in our great grandmothers, it was passed down to our grandmother, that mindset, that internal feeling of a lack of safety, just being a woman. And, you know, we now know, like I think about the little girl in my belly right now because I'm 28 weeks pregnant. I think, thank you. I think at 20 weeks, she developed her eggs because we're born with all the eggs that we're going to have, right? So thinking about at 20 weeks pregnant, my daughter in my belly has all the eggs, means really my grandchildren are in my belly as well. And so when my mother was in my grandmother's belly, I was in my grandmother's belly. So we think about all the trauma that my grandmother carried, because my grandmother experienced heavy assault. And she was carrying it from her grandmother. That feeling of like, well, if I have any sexual expression, or if people see me as a sexual being, it's not safe. We've carried it down, even if it wasn't our mothers or grandmothers' words to us. We have carried that energy just by being in their bodies. Our bodies remember it. And so, a lot of us forget that that is just heavily imprinted. Like that fear of being brave, that fear of being seen as, a woman who is sensual, or who has, like a very powerful sensuality. We carry that imprint of it.
Even though we carry it, there is still like so much judgment, even from other women, like women that are afraid to be fully expressed in their sexuality or in their full expression, or feel like you're maybe prettier or braver. They will convince themselves that you are less than, so they can feel worthy, or not feel less than. And then, like I said, hurt people hurt. And if they didn't heal their traumas, they will come at you. Did you have that? Did you have women judging you or putting you down for? So how did you handle it, and what was your process?
So a lot of women have experienced a lot of betrayal in that, they've been cheated on, or they caught their partner watching porn, or whatever it is, where their partner had a leaky sexual energy. And so if they see you with a sexual expression, it's easy to project on you that it's your fault that men stumble sexually. And so it's so important that we're integral with our sexual energy. When I say a woman who is very embodied in her sensuality, I don't mean a woman who is, going and inflicting pain on other women through her sexual energy. I truly mean a woman who is integral with her sexual energy. When I say, empowered, sexually, it doesn't mean, necessarily promiscuous, like able to just sleep with whoever. Maybe if that's what that means for you. But for me, it means that I feel that I am able to deeply connect with my partner in that sacred union, right? For a lot of women, when they see that, though, a woman who embodies her sexual energy, it feels dangerous for her, and it goes back to that imprint of what we've carried from our bloodline, because we're in 2025 right now. It was just in the late 60s that women needed their husband's approval to have a bank account. So that was only a little over 50 years ago. So again, our great grandparents, some of us are grandparents, could not even have a bank account without a man's permission. So we have this imprint that we need men for survival. And if we need men for survival, other women are our competition, because they can take that survival from us by either taking our man or getting that man before we get him, whatever the thought is. And so we carry this like wounding against women, that they are possibly our competition, but like this like underlying jealousy of, you know, like a risk for our survival in a way. Also, if we have experienced sexual trauma and there is a woman that's sexually expressed, it could also, for some of us, feel like she is perpetuating that culture, And so we're still coming out of this view that, like, because for me, that I feel deeply that the more we heal our sexuality and the more we express from this higher, energy of it, and the more we're in union with our beloved and not leaking that sexual energy, the less of all of that other stuff goes on in the world. The betrayal, the sexual trauma, even the sex trafficking, the porn usage, all of it. but if you're not yet able to experience that, then it's easy to blend the two and think that anyone that is sexually expressed is contributing to the problem instead of actually healing the problem. And for some of us, that is the case. So the judgment from women, what I have tried to remember is that it's actually, one, it's not personal. It's something that they feel about themselves, because we see the world as we are, not right. So I try to not just, first of all, not take it personal, because that can be really self-harmful. But also remember not to just turn the judgment back on them, but to actually have compassion. And that I also experienced, I was also there. I have also judged other women. Maybe it wasn't for their sexuality, maybe it was for something else, but we're all judging other people based on our own wounds. And so it goes into that bravery of, if you're not going to do something, or you're not going to heal something, you're not going to express something because you're afraid someone else is going to judge you, then ultimately, if we were all doing that, think about what type of world we would live in, And so it is an act of bravery. It is a choice of bravery. But I do think that when we do it in integrity, it's ultimately more healing than it is a lot of judgment.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about sex magic. How are we creating magic through sex? How can we manifest through sex? I heard that term. People talked about it a little bit. I still don't get how it works, or what's the practice of doing that. Like, what like a practical thing one can do to manifest or call in some sex magic, and what is sex magic to you? How did you use it in your life? And you don't have to answer all those questions that I just said in a row, but whatever your thoughts on the topics will be great.
Yeah, so this is another area of our sexuality that we really want to come into with integrity. When our sexual energy is our life force. It's the most potent energy that we have. And so when it comes to, and I don't love the word manifestation, but when it comes to what I like to kind of use is like alignment.
Oh, it's a good word. Because you always, manifestation is basically aligning with your desires, going up the same frequency of your desires, so they will manifest in the matrix, in the grid, in the quantum field, and then it just shows up in the physical. But the word alignment is the right word. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, because also manifestation almost sounds like we're trying to control our reality.
We are, though. Even if we're doing sex magic, we're trying to control our reality, because we're trying to get into alignment so we can control our reality.
Well, that could be the case. I know for me, whenever I'm doing the practice, I always state my desire. And I say this or something better, just show me how good it can get, because I don't want to limit. Like if I'm like, man, I really just desire partnership. I desire my husband, and I want my mountain of a man who's going to provide and protect and be the masculine pillar in the home. I'm stating my desire, which my desire is there because God put that desire within me. Like my desire is also God's desire. But if I'm like being very, very rigid about how it's to happen, when it's to happen, what he looks like, all of the things, then I am really limiting what may be able to come into my life. And so I state my desire. Maybe if it's not a partner, it's like, oh, I just really desire financial freedom. It's not a certain amount in my bank account. I just desire financial freedom so that I can provide for my children stress-free. I know God wants that for me. And then but I always say, God, just show me how good it can get in this area of my life. That's it. Like, you know what that looks like. I don't want to limit what can be, happening in my life. But what is happening for me when I do this practice is not I'm manifesting this specific thing. I have this many women signed up to my program, or I have this many downloads to my podcast. It's I want to impact those who can be impacted by my work. Show me how good it can get in this area. And then it's a surrender.
So the first step, don't be attached and hand it out to God, universe, whatever you believe in. This or better, or what was it? What was the sentence? This or much better?
This or something better is what I used to say. Now I say, just show me how good it can get. Like, yeah, just show me how good it can get in this area of my life, whether it's my parenting, my partnership, my, my impact in the world. And then I surrender because I trust that whatever that is much better than I can even ask for or even imagine. And so, for me in the actual practice, I'll state that. And then, the sex magic itself is because our sexual energy is so potent. It really is an attracting, magnifying energy. So like if we're holding that desire while we're doing our pleasure practice, we are upgrading our reality. We're really upgrading, like up leveling the energy that we're holding towards that desire. And in that, we're going to be able to attract it even more. And what also happens for me in the practice is that I do come into more alignment with it, because often what ends up happening is I feel whatever the blockage is that's keeping me from it, or I feel more worthy of whatever the desire is because I'm flooding my nervous system with pleasure. Or there's that voice of doubt that it's too late for me, or I don't have a big enough platform, or whatever it is. And then what ends up happening is because I connect to my pleasure, which connects me to my truth, I actually hear whatever it is that is like my inner queen's knowing instead of that voice of doubt. And so then I come into more alignment with that and living from that place. So instead of, I'm 38 years old and, I'm 40 now, but I remember this at 38 years old, feeling like, I don't know if I'm ever going to have that family unit with my person and have, the child with like the person who treats me well and that I love, with my entire being. Having all these, like, it's too late feelings of doubt. And then when I connect to my pleasure, it's just this knowing that it's meant to be, so it will be. And, really coming into trust. And when you come into more trust and you come into that feeling of deeper truth, you're coming into more alignment of that desire. But the sex magic itself is basically you're holding that intention, a surrendered version of the intention, and you're running it through your five senses. So what would this look like? What would it taste like? What would it smell like? What would it feel like? What would it sound like? And through that, you're allowing your nervous system to feel what it would actually feel like in reality, which is also telling your nervous system it's safe to have it, because a lot of times what you have in life is what your nervous system feels you can have. So if your nervous system doesn't feel that it's safe because of past trauma, you're not going to allow yourself to have it. You may bring in the partner, but then because your nervous system doesn't feel it's safe, you sabotage it, or you create too much conflict, or whatever it is. So whenever you run it through your five senses, your nervous system starts to feel like, oh, it's safe to have this. I can feel this. I can experience this. And then through that, after you do that, running it through your five senses, you incorporate pleasure, because the sexual energy is our most potent energy. You bring it into pleasure while you're holding that reality in your five senses, and that pleasure amplifies what you're attracting. And so that's basically sex magic. This has gotten into the hands of, people that don't have the highest intentions in the past. And I think that's why it's been so heavily suppressed, because this was something that priestesses used to do in the temples, and so, rightfully so, it was heavily suppressed. And then also for other reasons, of control and religious dogma and things like that. So we always want to hold it with the utmost respect and knowing that it's sacred, and not going into it feeling like almost like a grabby little princess of like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get whatever I want. We have to remember it's a very sacred practice, and hold it with reverence, and use it with integrity. Practice it with integrity.
Yeah, thank you. That's amazing. Thank you for that beautiful explanation. What are your 3 top tips to living a stellar life?
3 top tips to living a stellar life. I think the first one, it sounds maybe cliche or too simple, but I truly think dancing every day, even to just one song, because especially in the morning, because how you start your day is often going to affect the rest of your day. So if you can start your day with gratitude and movement, just dancing to one song that makes you feel good and releases those feel good chemicals, I mean, that's going to not only create a more stellar day, but it's teaching you that even if you're heartbroken, you woke up in heartbreak, or even if you're financially stressed, whatever it is, you can still dance. And that's really powerful. So I think dancing, I think treating your body as a temple, not only when it comes to all the things that we talked about today, when it came to consent and pleasure, but also what we're putting into our bodies, how we're caring for our bodies. Because if our bodies don't feel good, then our life isn't going to feel good. And so I think treating our bodies as a temple is really key in living a stellar life. And third, I think, is community. There's, of course, our partnership and our family, like within our home, but also community, whether that means getting involved in our community and being a very important role in helping our community flourish, or having a community to where you feel, I got this. Like, no matter what happens, I know I'm going to be okay because I have a really strong community. I feel that way all the time. I feel like no matter what happens, I will be okay because I have my community and I know that they've got me. And with that, it removes so much fear. And it took a lot of healing of, those wounds in community to really be able to trust that. But yeah, I think those 3 things. Yeah, if it's daily dance, doesn't take long, treating our bodies as a temple, and community, like really. And for a lot of people, I've had a lot of friends, a lot of people on Instagram ask, like, well, how do I develop community? Because a lot of us feel that that's actually something that we lack. But it's the same thing of what we talked about before, is like really aligning yourself to what you want to call into your life, and then really putting yourself out there and showing up and being, what you want to attract, like attracts like, right? So yeah, I think those 3 things I feel like would create a stellar life.
Thank you so much. And where can people find you?
So on Instagram, I'm at Jade Bryce. And my podcast is called Untamed and Unashamed. It's very similar to yours in that I have on people like Allison Armstrong, but also people like Kim Anami. It's like all over the place. I have on Paul Selig, who's like a channel. So it's quite all over the place, but it's all about, basically living our most optimized, highest life. So that's my podcast, Untamed and Unashamed. And my Instagram, again, is at Jade Bryce.
Thank you so much. And I really enjoyed our conversation and getting to know you. And thank you for everything you do in the world. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And thank you, listeners. Remember to dance every day. Treat your body as a temple. Have a strong community, or call in a strong community, and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.